Death and Democracy. The headline in the local paper February 17th read, "Convict slain for views, family claims." That one just reaches out and grabs you, doesn't it? The story concerned a man who was knifed to death last month in one of the most secure prisons in the world, the Control Unit Prison in Florence, Colorado. It turns out some racist nut named Maynard Campbell was stabbed and died in prison. The militia fringe has, quite predictably, claimed that Campbell was assassinated because the government feared him. This position is ironic because it is true that Campbell's death serves certain interests, but not the interests the right wing talks about. It seems quite possible to me that Campbell was allowed to interact with other inmates who would predictably be insulted by the ignorance and arrogance of his white separatist line, so perhaps Campbell was not actually murdered by the prison system, but a murder was allowed to happen. Campbell's attorney, one John DeCamp, a former state senator from Nebraska, is suspicious about the timing because Campbell had shortly before his death filed papers which DeCamp claims would prove the government did not have jurisdiction in the original case that landed Campbell in prison. How is it that someone claims to be persecuted by the government, but everywhere you look there are government officials espousing the same line? The right-wing nuts running around the country are not a threat to the government because they are not a threat to the class interest which control the current government. Government is a kind of imperfect, constantly changing compromise between the interests of the rich, who run the country, and the rest of us. Labor laws, income taxes, environmental protection, etc. This is called class struggle. Rich people don't want government telling them they have to pay overtime or can't just dump toxic waste wherever they want. The right wing pretends that somehow they stand in opposition to the government, to the ruling class, but their attacks on government are just a veiled attack on the democratic control of society. So I read the headline, which concerned me at first, and then I relaxed. Although it is tragic and sad, of course, that the prison system might be allowing racists to self-destruct in their interactions with the rest of a prison population, the rest of any prison population being mostly black, because the ironically termed justice system is so fundamentally unjust and racist. I just have a hard time taking seriously the protestations of people who are, in the end, the shock troops for the ruling class. If Campbell was allowed to be murdered, it was to encourage his point of view, not to crush it. Working people who support anti-government tendencies are just pawns for much larger interests that they refuse to understand. Campbell had threatened a war if he were killed. Like many right-wing nuts, he had a messiah complex. If such a war were to take place, who would benefit? Societies are complicated creatures, and the means by which decisions are made is significant. These days, there exist two main approaches to this question. One line suggests that private interests should make all the decisions. We should all be isolated monads, running around our plot of land or whatever, deciding what we want to do just for ourselves. By this way of thinking, everyone else is sort of the enemy, their interest in accumulating wealth being in conflict with mine. The other suggestion for society is that we work together, cooperate, and use mechanisms such as government so that decisions are made democratically in the spirit of making the world a better place for everyone. In fact, Maynard Campbell's murder has nothing to do with suppressing his demented point of view, because his associates have reacted just as one might suspect, lobbying for the disintegration of democracy in America. Campbell, and all working people who support fascism, white supremacy, and religious fanaticism are fighting against democracy, against themselves, and against the rest of us, not really against those who benefit from our suffering. In the end, the ruling class's agenda is the same as the Maynard Campbells of the world. Private, that is undemocratic, control of land and production is the principal mechanism for injustice today. Working people as a group must come to terms with this, or not, at our own peril. This is Richard Curtis.